Scholar is amazing. Like, really powerful, amazing. I've been having an awful lot of fun just completely shutting down bosses by applying the max debuff, which is the ×2 attack debuff, but then they also get infected, for lack of better wording, with this initial blast that Scholar himself must set off. And to smaller enemy types, it does a fair amount of stagger damage, which is always a bonus. Surprisingly, I haven't found myself using his buffs very much. To me, they're very minor. It's a simple stamina regen buff, and at max level, you get this protective bubble that lasts very briefly. You couldn't apply it from far away and then run to an enemy. It would be long gone before then. But should you pull it off successfully, it does some pretty crazy damage. But I prefer debuff Scholar over buff Scholar. On paper, Scholar's passive seems very boring and uninteresting. But in practice, it's actually quite strong. Items like the Exalted Flesh at its max level amplifies not only your physical damage, but your affinity. And even more curious items like the Gold Foulfoot, at its max level, it takes the role of both a silver and gold Foulfoot. But there are some consumables that are much more powerful than others. My personal favorite is the throwable knives, things like the kukris and the fan daggers. At its max level, it will apply the initial damage. So a kukri will deal its set damage, and if you throw multiple, it will deal the bleed. But also, it will apply a debuff. So what I've been doing is collecting throwable knives and keeping some on hand ready for any bosses to apply the defense debuff. Another really strong consumable are the throwable pots, fire pots, lightning pots, poison pots, and the like. To be honest, the numbers don't vary greatly, but if you can max out your throwable pots, they become these AoE machines. The fire pot, for example, becomes a layout of fire on the floor that does continuous damage on top of the initial blast. Scholar's ultimate is formidable at clearing groups or grouped bosses like the Oracle Envoys or Miranda Blossom, simply because of how fast it works when there is a team of 3 of you. This ultimate, in and of itself, isn't actually that impressive. But when you pair it with your teammates and them attacking separate targets, you can desecrate groups very fast. But as a bonus to that, you can also turn your brain off because the healing to damage ratio is so fast and so well impactful, there is no need to play properly, for lack of better wording. You can just throw yourself around Limveld and you will be fine as long as Scholar's ultimate is up, because even the slightest amount of damage, such as a melee attack, will heal you in return. Earlier, I briefly mentioned about Scholar's double attack debuff that applies this infection of initial damage that Scholar himself has to detonate. This debuff is absurd, to the point where I am fully expecting it to be nerfed. This debuff, specifically at its max level, turns bosses that should be absolute team stompers and really infantilizes them, and also makes them not as impressive as they should be, simply because they're not outputting the damage numbers they should be. Because this debuff is so strong, I have taken to a very close range form of playstyle, and due to Scholar's S in Arcane, I've been hunting down thrusting swords that apply things like rot or poison, because with good Arcane you can apply those effects quite fast. And weirdly, With all of these things combined, Skola becomes a miniature tank. Definitely not as powerful as Undertaker or Raider, but truly, he becomes a somewhat force to be reckoned with when you have good RNG and get the Opaline Bubble Tear upon successive attacks. But also, he can become a healing machine with relics like the HP restoration upon post-damage attacks. My point here is that if you're going to play Skola, I wouldn't regard him to be scholarly at all. I would definitely consider picking up 2 straight swords or thrusting swords and just getting all up in there, because honestly, you might as well do it now before this debuff gets nerfed into the ground. All in all, Skola has massively outplayed my expectations. I think this is a really strong team support character. I played a bit of Skola in solo mode for his remembrance as the queues were abysmal, and he just doesn't really shine, as it feels like his entire being is to enable those around him and debuff those in front of him. So if you're looking for a solo run character, I personally and subjectively probably wouldn't align with Skola, but if you're in a stack or you're wanting to help the randoms that you meet along the way, Skola is definitely one of your options, because the build possibilities on this man are quite incredible. As I said earlier, I myself have gone for a close range, I'm here to apply as many status effects as I can build, but Skola's ultimate is very powerful, so you could hope your RNG aligns with the less likely to be targeted item and simply build your ultimate from afar repeatedly, allowing your other 2 teammates to take advantage of your somewhat infinite healing and damage separations. Relic-wise, I find myself enjoying the HP restoration upon post-damage attacks and also any endurance-based relics, as thrusting swords are quite intensive, but also quite rewarding. When it comes to relics, like I keep saying, it really does feel like you can build and mold Skola into whatever you want with the right relic setup. I have swapped mine out like 5 different times at this point, making different kinds of builds. But my point with this video is to show people that Skola is very fun and is worth trying out because of how moldable he is. However, don't be mistaken, this video is not a guide. Night Rain is far too subjective for me to guide anyone, and I also am not good enough at Night Rain to guide anyone. But when I see something I enjoy, when I see something I feel passionate about, I simply must share it with the masses. And dare I say, Skola must be shared with the masses. If anyone else is enjoying Skola as much as myself, please, I urge you to leave all your tips, tricks, and other whimsical things in the comments and to let me know about them immediately, as this character is very fun and I will probably sink a decent amount of hours on him. Until next time, praise the sun and consider becoming well informed in the art of combat.
Don't you dare let yourself go hollow, lest my time spent on you be wasted.